I thought we'd start with some fun questions first. Like, when was the last time you were afraid?
Oh, it's been like 20 seconds.
Really?
Yeah.
And so what scares David Cohen?
People.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you afraid of me?
I'm extremely introverted. And it's hard to be introverted and be an investor, but I've sort of figured out how to do that. I'm not actually scared, but maybe a little. And I also don't like to travel. I get a little scared on planes. Yeah.
And so what do? Do you have any secrets that you use to overcome your fears?
Just, distraction, music, reading. Like when a plane's taking off, I'm always like trying to read something or ignore.
Any rituals that you use in your life to keep the joy going? Because I know what you do sometimes can be hard.
Rituals. So there's a bunch of sports ones.
Okay.
But that not really relevant. Like, I always have to sit in the same place when I'm watching a Florida State Seminole
You do?
game.
Okay.
I can't move, and so I have to pee before I watch the game.
And you're there the whole time?
People bring me stuff, and that's my
Really?
seat. And sometimes when I move, they lose. And in life, it's more like work-life balance stuff. So my wife and I have what we call a JIVID once a month, which is Jill and David.
Oh, nice.
And we always just go out. It's not a date night. It's a life sort of discussion, like what are our goals, what's going well. It's a chance to complain to each other and get away with it. Sometimes it's a little gift, something like that. So that keeps us sane. If I'm traveling a lot, there's always that, and always make sure it happens.
That's
and
good
then
advice.
I walk on a treadmill in my office a lot.
You do while you're working?
Helps me think.
Do you have one of those desks on the treadmill, that like the standing walking desk?
It's a desk that you can elevate, and you push a button, it goes down.
Nice.
So it's an automated standing sitting desk.
That's
with
cool.
a treadmill, which I love.
That's awesome.
So I don't know, I do a lot of walking to clear my mind. What's the one big thing that changed your life? I mean, it's hard to pick one. I mean, obviously, meeting my wife and getting married and having kids, that was a life changer, which has been a great thing. In business, different mentors have affected me in huge ways. I mean, Brad Feld, we're sitting here in their office. He's been one of them. My dad and his company and working there. But with Brad or others that have been mentors, it's like the one thing they can do for you that can really change the trajectory of where you're going as a person, and they become a good friend and really help your career.
Is there like a general piece of advice that you've gotten that you tend to pass on to new entrepreneurs out there?
The one is just, it's about mindset, and the way that Feld talks about that is, do or do not. There is no try. It's Yoda. He ripped it off.
I thought he said that. I thought he ripped it.
That was Yoda. Yoda said it first.
Just get started. Remember, nobody's going to elect you boss. The very first thing you should do is go look for other entrepreneurs like you who want to go do something. And just get started. It starts with 2 or 3 or 4.
People can feel it when you're like, I'm going to do this.
Once you decide, it's
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, this is going to happen.
The other big one, obviously, is surround yourself with amazing mentors and people, and that's sort of what I do now. Is I help entrepreneurs by providing mentorship to them, not from me, but from an amazing community of people. And I think that's a game changer for a startup. Like, entrepreneurs really underestimate the value of that network and that experience. I know I did in my first companies. When I first started pitching the idea, the first person I pitched was Brad Feld, and the second person we pitched was Jared Polis. So, good call on partners there. And they both got it right away and were immediately supportive. Yeah, and I've been sort of building it ever since and sort of actively running it. And now we're about 32 people. So.
And how many cities?
We're in 5 cities.
One of the things I read as I was doing research is you have something that you've referred to as graceful failure.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that to someone who is out there that might not be feeling so graceful about their failures?
Yeah, I mean, graceful just means you're still alive, right? So, it was a company called iContact. A lot of people have heard of iContact. It's a company that we sold the domain name to that did really well, and it was acquired in the last year. Ryan Ollis was the guy we sold the domain name to. And that was the most money we ever made, was selling him a domain name. Wow. So big revenue there. That was a mobile social networking product, not unlike Foursquare or similar systems today. And it was just too early before the mobile phone environment was open. We had a lot of distribution problems. We shut it down in a year and a half. We lost some money. A lot of it was our money, so that was good. But we had a few investors. And it was graceful because we knew it wasn't working. We made a conscious decision to shut it down and return a little bit of investor capital to outside investors. And, you know, learn very specific lessons about the importance of distribution on the internet. A lot of entrepreneurs underestimate that. They think, oh, it's so easy, it's just an open platform. But the how of getting it out there, you know, there are a million people trying to do it to get your attention on the internet. And there's only 24 hours in your day. So you have to really understand how you're going to reach those people. And I learned that, you know, very hard lesson, and several others. You learn more from your failures than your successes, for sure.
And what about picking yourself up and getting back out there again after something like that?
You know, I guess I never thought about it that way. It's just what you do, right? So, I mean, I've only had one job interview in my life, and I got that job,
Right.
which was kind of cool. So I'm like 100%.
What job was it? What was it?
It was a company called Automated Dispatch Services, right out of college. I read a programming book on the language that they used the night before the interview so that I could use a few buzzwords. So I was a programmer, but I didn't know that language, but I was able to pretend that I did, and I got the job. And, you know, and then I decided, you know, this working for other people thing is tough, and, you know, I wanted to control, you know, what I created in the world and get some of the value from it, right? And I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. So quit that job and started a company, and, you know, the idea of working for somebody else is now foreign to me. So I never, you know, it was just what's the next startup, right? And I think that's how it'll always be for me.
And I read that you're selling now and laters out of your locker when you were in like 8th grade. So this is a question I have for you. Do you think entrepreneurs are born, or do you think someone who has a desire but maybe they're in a regular job but they want to be an entrepreneur, can you make that leap? Or do you think it's just something in you, like I can't work for someone else?
Yeah, you know, that's a debate that's gone on forever. I don't know if I know the answer, but, you know, I know that a lot of people don't know that they could be good entrepreneurs, right? Because they haven't tried it. So they might have been born an entrepreneur, but they're trapped in a, you know, body of an employee. And so, you know, they have to get out there and try it to find out. I definitely think you can learn. I do think you need an innate, you know, drive, this sort of, you know, desire to accomplish something meaningful and to create in the world to really be successful, because it's so hard to have a successful startup. It's much easier to take a job and get a nice salary, and, you know, there's no judgment about that. It's just it's a totally different lifestyle. I think you're born with something, right? Which is this sort of internal pride, the desire to create, and then you can learn a lot around that, right? So what Techstars is doing, a lot of it is teaching, you know, these companies how to, you know, be better entrepreneurs. I think they have to have that spark, right, and that internal drive, or I don't think it works.
And I love this quote: entrepreneurs do stuff, and wantrepreneurs talk about doing stuff. Do you run into a few wantrepreneurs?
Yeah, and often you can't tell the difference, but you just have to, you know, it's a heuristic that I use. I just make an assumption that if you haven't done anything, you're not really an entrepreneur. So, you know, the idea is the easy part. I always talk about this notion of, you know, the idea has no value, right? Like, you know that website that you can go to you know, trade ideas and make money off of ideas? So you just list your idea and then someone might buy it?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, because it doesn't exist. Because ideas are worthless, so there's no market for it, right? That's why it doesn't exist. That always works. It's shtick.
I'm not the first one that fell for that.
But the point being, you know, it's not something that has value. You have to actually do it, right? So when you come to me with the greatest idea in the world, I just look at you and say, cool, like, where's the prototype? And that's just a simple test. And I say, well, I don't have a developer yet, I need funding. No, that's not what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs run through walls. That's just a wall. Go run through it.
Yep.
If you're Nate and Natty from Ever Later, you teach yourself how to code to get through that wall. Or you convince someone to do it for free, right?
Yep.
To make a prototype. So that's what entrepreneurs do. They do stuff. And you know, we use that test all the time. If we don't see evidence of stuff happening, you're just talking about an idea that doesn't have any value.
So one of the things I read is the traits that you look for in a great entrepreneur are street smarts, passion, and commitment. So you don't need a Harvard MBA? How come?
No, actually, you don't need a Harvard MBA. So we have a lot of data on this. You know, we've seen applications from probably 15,000 companies now, 4,000 new ones a year. We've funded 160 companies. I'm an angel in 40 more outside of that. I see no correlation between a startup's ultimate success and what school somebody went to. And I think a lot of the other, investors that are doing volume have said the same thing. So it just doesn't seem to be the case. And so we don't put a lot of weight on exactly, where you went to school. We put more weight on, the street smarts of your team and the reason you're doing what you're doing, the passion you have around it, and, your ability to execute, which is evident by what you've done.
One of the posts that I read on your blog that I loved was about finding and engaging great mentors. You had some really good advice. Part of it was, you said most people wait too late to start this relationship with their mentor, and then you had some really specific things that people do wrong.
Probably the biggest one that people do wrong is they all go after the most notable, mentor who's the most famous, person, right? So it's Fred Wilson or Dennis Crowley or Foursquare. That's the person I want to talk to. And often that person doesn't necessarily have direct experience in what they're doing. You're kind of going after a name as opposed to going after someone that you really respect that has related knowledge to what you're doing. So I think, going after those mentors that are, maybe successful, and approachable in your local community, right, is going to get you better results. So that's one thing. Another huge mistake is not closing the loop. You get feedback from a mentor, and you have to think of it as a relationship you're building over a long period of time. You get the feedback, you don't like it, you don't do that, you figure, oh, that relationship's dead. I didn't do what that mentor wanted. But the best mentors don't expect you to do what they wanted, right? They expect to learn from the relationship, right? So if you go off and you test the thing that they told you to do and they were right, and you tell them that, they'll learn. If it was wrong and you tell them that, they'll also learn. Right? So why is a mentor helping out? Because it's fun and they get to learn. So just recognize that, close the loop, tell them what you're doing. If you disagree and you're going another direction, that's fine. Right? The best mentors will be excited to learn from that. They won't laugh at you when you were wrong. They'll learn when you're right, hopefully. So I think closing the loop is super key. So those are some of the things that people do wrong. We also, on that blog, I have a blog post called the Mentor Manifesto, which is how to be a good mentor. Sort of from the other perspective. And it's really about being Socratic in your approach and, not telling people what to do. So you kind of see it from both sides when you read those two posts.
Yeah, and I loved what you said just about keeping that conversation going, not necessarily always taking their advice, but doing something.
Yeah.
Which goes back to doing stuff, and then writing your mentor back and saying, here's what I did, here's why, and keeping them engaged, and they learn, you learn.
And that something could be, I took a shower and I thought about what you said and I don't agree with it. And so I'm not going to do that. And I think, you have some mentors that aren't great that say, well, that's a stupid decision. And then you have other mentors that say, okay, awesome. Like, I'm glad you thought about it. Hopefully it was helpful. That's the mentor you want. Right? So I think it's not about being right as a mentor. It's about building a relationship, working with someone, giving them ideas and learning from what they learn in the process.
Great. Let's talk about this Microsoft Accelerator in Seattle. You just announced this in January. You said it's been a huge hit, and I read you said it's really blown me away. Yeah. And I'm thinking of all the Techstar stuff that happens, all the stuff that you're involved in. What does it take to blow you away? What is this?
So first I'll tell you quickly what the Microsoft Accelerator is. So it's powered by Techstars, a Microsoft program. It's in Seattle in a Microsoft building. What does that mean? We actually run it for them. But they're super involved in picking the companies and providing resources and mentors to the companies, and they provide the funding. So what's blown me away is the first program was focused on a technology called Connect, which is the motion control and voice system that Microsoft has on the Xbox and now on Windows. That's a really specific technology. It's not mainstream in startup culture from my perspective, right? If I looked across all of the past Techstars applications, I think we found 4 or 5 references to the Connect device. Nobody was coming to Techstars with those ideas. Okay, that one device and this one accelerator in Seattle that you have to travel to for $20,000 attracted 500 companies from around the world to apply to the program. Okay, that means there must be thousands. So this one little device created thousands of companies, each of which employ several people. It created thousands and thousands of jobs, right? And so I was just blown away by the number of people that were building something on this platform that were willing to pick up and move for a little bit of money and mentorship. And then we picked 11 companies. Half of them were international, I think 5, and 6 from the US. And just the things that they were creating were not what you would expect. It wasn't a game, right, on an Xbox. It was, a way for a doctor to control an operating room in a sterile environment, right? It was a way to turn a projector on the wall into a touchable wall that you could manipulate any software that was running and coming off that projector. So just amazing innovations from this one little ecosystem around Microsoft called the Kinect. So that's what blew me away. And of course, we had the demo day, and there was a lot of investor interest. I think a bunch of the companies will get funded. And for us, it was an experiment. But we're happy to be doing more. Microsoft's announced the second program that we're powering, so we're excited about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I was going to switch over now to this work-life balance. That's another thing that you have been very vocal about. In fact, I think yesterday, I was following you on Twitter, and you tweeted best blog post ever about this idea of not only paid vacations, but paid vacations.
Yeah.
That's like mind-blowing.
Yeah, so Full Contact, which is one of the Techstars companies, in fact, just yesterday they announced a new fundraise. I think they raised like $7 million. So they have a lot of paid vacations they can pay for now. They backed it up with some funding. It wasn't so much about the paid aspect of that I thought was amazing about the post. That's just a recruiting, genius idea that Full Contact had. It's just a way to attract employees, and but more it was about the core belief that you do need to disconnect. You do need to get out there, and if the company's going to pay for it, you're more likely to do it, and you're more likely to be a long-term employee that's loyal and ready to rock for the company, right? So. I'm just a huge believer in that construct in general, and I think employees are more productive when they do disconnect once in a while. I don't do it as much as I should, but I do it.
That's what I was going to ask, because I live with a startup entrepreneur, and he's on his 4th or 5th startup now. And, we're both entrepreneurs by nature, I think, a little bit. I'm a writer, so I'm working on my own at home. But I'm really big on napping, and I know I get, my best ideas when I'm unplugged. My husband's much more, 24/7. His brain is. So at what point in, let's say there's someone out there who has a new startup and it's still struggling, and maybe it's not profitable yet, or they're still trying to, get it to that place. When do you feel like you can actually start to step away and, put the phone down?
I think you should do it every 6 months at the least. And I with Techstars, I've more or less been on that schedule. If you look at my calendar today, it's back-to-back meetings every day, all day today from, probably 9 o'clock to 5:30, literally just no breaks, go. And that's a typical day for me. And then I'll go home, hang out with my family, and then I'll work till 2 in the morning. Yesterday it was 3 in the morning. So if I look a little tired, that's why. But that's what we do as entrepreneurs, right? And I think the most important decisions or realizations I've made about Techstars have been when I've been sitting on a beach somewhere, reading a book, or just not worrying about what's going on right now, but just thinking deeply about the business alone, or talking to my wife about it, or whatever. And I think if you don't do that, you're missing a huge opportunity, right, to get away from it and see it from 10,000 feet. So you got to force yourself to do it. And you know what? You're a startup. The phone's going to ring. Your voicemail's going to say, I'm gone for a week. The world's not going to fall apart.
No one's going to die. It's not brain surgery.
I mean, we did an ambulance dispatch company, so in our case, we had to have somebody there, but generally not.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so let's talk Techstars. You've got a brand new batch here, right? There's 12 companies?
12, yeah.
12? You want to share a little bit about this crop of the world's finest entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we can meet some of them.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, again, I don't know the exact number, Nicole will tell you, but, somewhere around 800 to 900 companies applied. We picked 12. 12 seems to be the new 10. We really look for the line where it sort of feels like, it's okay, we'll let that one go. Because we've always been focused on, quality and not quantity. So we don't want to have 40 companies. We want to really help every one of them. But we found that, there seems to be better and better quality, and that cutoff has drifted towards 12 and not 10. So, and we can manage it. It's a diverse group of companies. You've got, plush toy with it's an iPhone that you put into it, and it's just really fun to play with for kids. You've got, a consumer application for photos in Bird Box. You've got, deal advertising thing in Roximity. the businesses are really diverse. So I like that. I like being able to walk in there and have totally different mental challenges and things to think about, for the individual businesses. People always ask, which ones do you really like? I don't know, which of your kids do you like the most is sort of how that sounds. You love them all. That's why you funded them. And I think they all have a shot at being really meaningful companies that have an impact on the world and on people, and that's why we do this.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've heard you and Brett talk a lot about is that you're not investing so much in the actual idea. A lot of times you're investing in the people.
Yeah.
And we go back to talking about doing stuff. I just heard Brad say recently that if you really want to get into Techstars, a lot of the ones that you select apply early.
Yep.
And between the time that the application gets submitted and the time that you are selected, they've done a lot of stuff in between that time. So that seems to be one of the secrets of getting your attention.
It is, although the secret's gotten out, and we get a lot of emails and updates. But Mark Suster, who's an investor in LA and a friend, said it best when he talked about it's lines, not dots. It's not a data point here and a data point there. And an application to Techstars is just one data point, right? So if you get it in earlier, you have the line, or you give us more data points over time while we're thinking about you. So that allows us to see that trajectory and where that line is going, and it's easier to get your head around investing. So it is a relationship, not an application, is a tip I would give people. And you have to build that largely over email or by updating the application with updates, but doing stuff during the application process is a important thing to think about, for sure.
That's great. Finally, I've had a chance to just meet you and Brad both since I moved to Boulder a few years ago, and what always strikes me so deeply is that you're leaders in our community, you're very accessible, and you live by this philosophy of give first.
Yep.
And I think I've never in my life met anyone like you guys and lived in a community that really practices that. What would you say? Can you give some advice to some of these entrepreneurs out there across the country that are struggling, that are still at the beginning stages, and you guys make it look so easy? You're so relaxed and wise and Yoda-like.
I don't know about that. Do what you love. For me, it's not hard to give first to entrepreneurs because I love working with them. I love thinking about their businesses. To me, the first year of a startup is just the most fun. Once it's working, it's boring. Who wants to be around something that operating business, right? I get a little antsy with Techstars because it kind of works on some level, and I almost want to break it so I can make it better again. And I think if you're an entrepreneur and you're not doing what you love, you can't get through that stuff. So be real with yourself about what you're working on and do it for the reason that you love it, not because it's a big market or it's going to make money or it's investable. That's a big thing we talk about. And I'm a huge believer. Every single company I've been involved in or that I've started that's been successful has been because somebody had a passion for a thing and they had a mission on it. It was something they wanted to change in the world, small or big, and it happened. It was often not manifested the way that they originally thought about it. 40% or more of companies that go through Techstars don't end up doing what they applied with. Right? But they end up solving the problem. So be obsessed about the problem, not the solution, is something that we talk about. And if you are and you love that problem and you identify with it, whether you have it or you just identify it with people that do, or it's meaningful to you in some way, you're much, much more likely to be successful because it's just too easy to quit. Startups are just too hard.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. One of the things we're doing at Stardo is we're creating a searchable database of really specific problems that entrepreneurs might be facing. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like for you to do, if possible, is just pick one thing that you could tell, like a quick 3-minute story or a really solid piece of advice that somebody might be able to just go search this one thing.
So, of course, Techstars is all about mentorship, and we try to provide the best possible mentorship to our companies and give them that unfair advantage. A lot of people have come to me and said, okay, I get it, intuitively, but why specifically is mentorship so important? Why is it as an entrepreneur that I should remember to surround myself with the best people that I can, that have experience? What is it really going to do for me? Is it going to be a nugget here or there that I figure out and use in some way? So I'll tell you just a couple of maybe specific examples that I've seen around Techstars of the power of having great mentors around you. Because I think entrepreneurs in general underestimate the value of having mentors. I know in my first company, I did not have any. And the first story I'll tell is of that company. It was called Pinpoint Technologies. We sold the company to a public company in 2009. 1999. Wow. Cut that. 1999. And it was called Zoll, the company that bought us. We sold the company in a nice exit. The company was 5 or 6 years old. It was a great outcome for everyone involved, but we had no mentors. So we, first-time entrepreneurs, 3 of us, were negotiating an exit to a public company on our own. Great. We had a great outcome. Everything was great. Happy we did it. Hindsight's 2020. Except 5 years later, the CEO of Zoll, who bought us, said, "You guys know you left half the money on the table?" This is a significant amount of money. Mm-hmm. Because we had never negotiated with a public company. We had never been through an exit. They had been through all kinds of things in their careers, right? They were a public company, had all kinds of great advisors. And they negotiated and really killed us on the negotiation. Now, we still did well, but we could have done twice as well. And we're talking about a fair amount of money. I saw that in action in Techstars many times later. We have companies that have, because a mentor has been on the phone with the acquirer, doubled their exit value on a phone call. So they had a term sheet that they were ready to sign, but through the experience of a mentor, they were able to get on the phone, have the mentor talk, on behalf of the company, or coach the entrepreneur through it, and literally double the exit value. Okay, so if you think a good mentor is not worth a point or two in your company, it can actually be worth a lot more than that in 5 minutes, right? So those are some specific examples of how mentorship can help you. Second example, really quick, there's a company here in town that's a Techstars company called SendGrid. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 employees, growing really, really rapidly. Raised a lot of funding, very profitable, interesting company. They almost were acquired very early on because once a little bit of money gets put on the table in front of first-time founders, it's sort of very tempting. But they had a great mentor named Mark Solon, who was on the board and was one of their early investors that really walked them through what they wanted to do in the world and whether or not it was time to sell. If they would have sold the company, I believe it would have been a huge disservice to them as entrepreneurs, and it would not have turned out anywhere near as well as it has turned out. Ultimately, and it already has proven to be worth more, but it will be worth a lot more. And just having those people to walk you through that and help you understand the pros and cons can save you from huge, huge mistakes. I think that was 100x difference in what they would have sold for and what they will within a few years. And that's because a mentor had that impact on them. So, it's just moments in time. It's not even necessarily ongoing support that mentors can have unbelievable impact on your company. So surround yourself with people that have been there and done it.
In Denver for the past 5 years, there's not been much of a scene. It's getting better, and Bart and other guys and Perry are starting to be more active, and all those guys. But the truth is, it was really hard to find mentors. It wasn't necessarily I'm not talking about the challenge of picking up the phone and making a phone call, because that's the easy part. We're hustlers. But literally finding somebody who had done anything interesting that you could pick up the phone and call. I mean, and I guess now we're in a more virtual world, but kind of address that.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Fred Wilson refers to this as the Darwinian nature of startup communities, right? Yeah. The ones that have the people, it's a perpetuating cycle, right? And Boulder's broken into that, but it wasn't there 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago for sure. And I think that's an advantage for a particular community. So I do think that there are mentors in every community. It's sort of how many are there and what are their experiences and the quality of them.
That's the hard part. I mean, literally. So Nordmark or whoever else was around there, but that was it.
In the blog post that you referenced earlier, I talk about how do you find a great mentor. And I think you just find companies that you admire locally that have some similarity to your business. Mm-hmm. And you go talk to the CEO and you go talk to the founders. Right? And you'd be surprised that people will, take a meeting in general. They'll at least respond to your email. And you just have to think about it as a relationship that develops over time. Your first ask has to be tiny, small, right? Like, just answer this email, not lunch or coffee, right? And then you answer the email, it goes back, maybe have another question. You start to build some engagement. Eventually they play with your product, they get more interested, and then they take a meeting. That might be the 16th interaction. But you have to invest in that relationship. So targeting quality of mentors from companies you admire that are similar in nature to yours or have some relevance to yours is a tactic that I think works.
I just see so many startups that they just give up. Like, okay, who are you talking to? Like, I'm sure you're talking to me. That's great. But, I've got a couple other guys that are kind of in my same boat that been around for a few years, but not 10 years. Who else are you talking to? Well, I can't find anybody. I get, well, what do you mean you can't find anybody?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of mentorship programs. I mean, the challenge is just, the quality level that people are going to find. So some people have had one experience and they're not Socratic in their approach and they're telling you what to do. Just run from those people, right? I mean, what you're looking for is people that have multiple experiences, ideally including failures, right? That you can, listen to and get ideas from, but that they're accepting when you don't accept their ideas, right? And they're asking questions, not making statements, right? That's how you tell you're working with a good mentor. They're making you think about the right issues.